So everyone, take a deep breath. Some of you have been here for a while. You know, it's been maybe an hour or so. We appreciate everyone really doing everything that we ask to try to make this as smooth and as easy as possible. Really appreciate everyone's effort, and we're here. So take a moment and let that soak in. You know, I know it's been a while for some people, and you can give yourself permission to look around and see the faces of the people that have gathered here, even with masks. You know, we can see each other, see the light in each other's eyes, and just the spirit that emanates from every human being. People you know so well you came here with them, and people that you've never seen before. So in our tradition, as you know, we have a section of a psalm that just says it all for right now. Hine matov umanayim, shevatim gam yachad. It is so good to gather together. I hope I never take it for granted again. So this is the first evening high holiday service ever to be held in our sanctuary. That's really true. So yeah, so we're all part of something really kind of monumentous and meaningful. So although this is a place many of us have known and loved since it opened in 2000, we've always been, you know, kind of wandering Jews, especially when it came to Erev, Rosh Hashanah, and Kol Nidre. We've had alternative services here during the morning, but never in the evening. Even last year, when we had services outside in the tent for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur Day, we recorded services here, Daniel and Karen, and Rabbi Susan, and Rabbi Jim and I, with no congregation. I felt everyone's presence, but this is truly a first. So when we sing Shehachianu with Alan in just a few minutes, add that to your blessing list for something that's happening for the first time. Let this gathering inspire us. May it lift us up and give us hope in these challenging times. Sitting here now, let us surrender to the holiness of the moment so we may connect to one another, support one another, and even, dare I say it, so we may love one another. This, my friends, my dear friends, is what beloved community looks like, right here and right now. So it's an honor for me to introduce Natalie Schatzman, who is our board president. Natalie started her term in the midst of the time that we were closed. The whole synagogue, except for the nest, was closed. And Natalie came in to that position really in a void. And we needed her and her set of skills and her heart and her concern and care for CRC. And so for those of you who know her, you already know all that. For those of you who don't know her, I'm pleased to ask Natalie to come and say a few words as our board president.
Hello, and thank you for, move it closer, is that better? Yeah, okay, thanks, Stan. Yeah, thank you for showing up tonight. I'm gonna put this up here. And hello to the rest of the community that is streaming from abroad, and I hope you're gathering with people that you love and your family and your friends from every corner of the earth. We've been really lucky that that's something that we've been able to add. If there's a bright light with COVID, that is something that has happened, is to be able to take the CRC community and span it out much further than this room. Okay, I'm going to talk really into the microphone. You stole my thunder, Randy. I thought of you. I said I could hear Randy's voice in my ear, and it was Hine Ma Tov. It's so good to be together, and I could feel that right when I entered in here, so it's just so funny that you said that just now. It always takes me back to children's services with my kids, because Randy would sing that every week. And as I was preparing to speak tonight, I was reminded of something else from my home, my family, that we would use as a way to pause, reset, and shift gears. So my house is a hub of activity. I have a husband, Matt, and 2 kids, West and Mira. They're in 9th and 7th grade. They've grown here at CRC. We have 2 80-pound Labradors and a 19-year-old cat, and there is lots of movement in my house. At any given time, there's a hockey bag, a horse saddle, some dog toys. It's all in the living room, and you're stepping over it. And any morning before school, we have music playing on a Bluetooth speaker. Someone's learning a TikTok dance, and then someone else is about 7 minutes before we're going to walk out the door, they're screaming, I need to make my lunch and brush my teeth still. So it's easy to say and easy to notice that we're overscheduled, we're busier than we should be, which leads to plenty of tension and moments in our house when a pause is necessary. So years ago, my husband, Matt, bought this little device. You might know it well. It's those little front desk bells that you have at, the front desk of like a hotel. It goes ding when you hit it, and it said reset button on it. And so from a very young age, when someone was having a moment in our house, it could have been a young person or an older person having a moment and screaming. Usually their feelings were hurt, there's tears coming. We would use the reset button as a physical reminder that you need sometimes to just put a pause on some situation. It wasn't always greeted with open arms. Sometimes it was met with even more tears and feeling pretty bad that someone was calling you out. But I tell you what, the reset button never failed. It was always there, a chance to pause and reset and redirect what you were feeling and what you were doing at that time. And sometimes it took 2 or 3 times of hitting the bell. And so, but eventually we would recognize that that's what our family needed whenever we, when we were kind of at each other, or just had too much commotion in the house. I love that in Hebrew the word for the same concept of a reset button is teshuvah, which is especially purposeful this time of year. The new year is upon us, and the dates in the calendar are just sort of shoved in your face. And so whether or not you're ready for the proverbial reset button to be in front of your face, it is here. And I like to think that at this moment, the CRC community provides that reset button for each other. So for me, it's no matter how I get to this moment, that teshuvah, that reset, it always does the trick. I'm always taking a physical pause and just taking a moment just to stop the activity going on in my head, in my house, and everywhere else beyond. I'd say that sometimes you're in this space here, and there'll be just a friend that comes up to you and says, hi, or you'll hear something in the music, or the light will just shine through the windows just so, and you stop. It's kind of that moment. It's that ding that goes off in your head that makes you just pause and go, oh, I can just forget what's happening. And I'd say that as an organization, over the last couple of years, we've hit the reset button a few times, sometimes intentionally, sometimes very purposefully. I'd say that even in the second day of Rosh Hashanah, Rabbi Susan and Jim won't be able to join us. They're recovering, but we're pivoting and we're resetting again and again. And we're so lucky to have reset buttons that are placed all over our lives, whether we like it or not. And we're so lucky that CRC can be that reset button for each other in our wider community. So I want to thank you for showing up and for being there for one another to be part of it. For me, because I consider this my giant reset. And you can see it whenever you're here in this space, you're out on the streets, you're fighting for a cause, you're calling a friend who's sick and delivering something. You do it whenever you're supporting our community in so many ways, just by being there, by financially supporting our staff and our rabbis. It's a beautiful community, one that I'm really proud to be part of. So you're part of the community that provides this reset and the opportunity for teshuvah for other people. So I hope you realize your part in that. And so I hope you also continue to hear that reset bell, the ding when it goes off, but more through the familiar sounds of a shofar, or maybe even just through a friend saying, hey, it's good to see you again. So I just want to say Shana Tova. Thank you. Yeah, you're welcome.
We start on page 1.
May the door of the synagogue be wide enough to receive all who hunger for love, all who are lonely for fellowship.
May it welcome all who have cares to unburden, thanks to express, hopes to nurture.
May the door of this synagogue be narrow enough
To shut out pettiness and pride, envy and enmity.
May this threshold be no stumbling block
To young or straying feet. May it be too high to admit complacency, selfishness, and harshness.
May the synagogue be
For all who enter this doorway to a richer and a more meaningful life. Just like we begin the Sabbath on Friday night with the lighting of lights, so do we begin our holy days. So do we begin this new month of Tishrei and this new year of 5783. So I'm going to ask wonderful Gail Wexler and Bob Croft to come up to light our holiday lights, our Yontif, our Chag lights. Wonderful longtime members of this congregation whose children grew up here. That's the exact right entrance right there. Gail and Bob and their family have suffered way too many losses this year, friends and family, and most recently, Bob's mom of blessed memory. And also, through it all, such commitment to making the world a better place. In Gail's case, tireless advocacy for gun control and keeping our children safe. So we love you guys. And if you'll light the candles for this holy day. We've got matches and lighters. And stay here while we sing the brachot, the blessings.
Asher Gishon
another blessing, for something new, for renewal, for the new moon and the sliver of light to grow and expand and let our hope increase and our love increase. Let us keep on growing that light from this new moment as we begin the new year. One of the melodies that really, I think, defines in many ways the high holidays here at CRC is on page 3. The word in Hebrew for melody is nigun, but nigun also has become a spiritual practice, a way of entering into song and spirit without any words at all, just breath and sound and spirit, just lai, oohs and ahs and sounds that come from us, from the deepest parts of our soul. So this is our nigun. The root for the Hebrew word for year, shana, is the same as the Hebrew word, the root in the word for change, which is shinui. I love that such an age-old holiday also carries in its very name the notion of changing. These services, ourselves, and life in general should contain both traditions and innovations, familiarity and transformation, comfort and renewal, consistency and change. Our prayers on this day that begins at night begin with a powerful declaration, Hineni. I am here, we are asked to declare. I am humbly but radically present for all of it, old and new, to celebrate a new year, but also to deeply reflect on how I can be more often my best self going forward, with open arms, an open mind, and an open heart. So let's try it. The word is hineni. It just means I am here, I am present. So how about if, really, on the count of 3, say that prophetic, deliberate, spiritual word. 1, 2, 3. Hineni. I feel you. Hineni, it says, here I am of little merit, trembling even as I stand here, knowing that the searing work of cheshbon nefesh, the accounting of our souls that is ahead, but also mindful that the heart that is broken is the heart that is open, the heart that is ready for transformation, for hope, for healing, and for connection. I am so grateful to Rabbi Susan for creating and setting the tone of how our community experiences these high holy days. It is now in our congregational DNA, this tone, this sense. Whether we are at Coca, raise your hand if you went to high holidays at Coca. Yeah, the old B'nai Amunah. In the round at Westport. Yeah, we won't even pause there. We'll just keep going. The Chase, the JCC, and right here in our Sukkot Shalom. I knew I was going to miss one or two. Yankee Stadium, no. Wherever we are, whether we're here in our synagogue, whether you're streaming, and I just want to make sure we all say Shalom and Shana Tova to everyone who's watching us from near and far. I also want to introduce you, if you haven't seen it yet, just turn around and see that, that window that's been carved into the back of the synagogue. That is our streaming booth. And inside that booth is wonderful Autumn Dennis. Yes, that's all right. So for those of you who've been watching services since you know, we've been through all of this, Autumn, you know, first it was Rabbi Daniel, and then Autumn came and relieved him of that duty. And so we really, just so appreciative that we're able to be here and there and everywhere. Hineni, here we are. So what I'd like to do, since I said that about Rabbi Susan, you know, Rabbi Susan's words are also all over this Machzor that we all created together. So if you turn to page 6, I love this one. Let's read this together. This is another Hineni interpretation. Hineni is also a radical response, like Adam and Abraham. We are called to respond to this day with complete mindfulness, complete presence. For these holy days, we are called to take our own sins and the sins of the world. For these holy days, we are called to respond, Hineni. All may not be guilty, but we are all responsible to heal the planet and to end the violence breaking the heart of the world. On this night, we begin by standing together, by confessing these sins, by vowing that we will do our part to make this year a better year than the last. And so this is the first day of the Hebrew month of Tishrei, the start of Rosh Hashanah, but it is not the first month the way the secular New Year begins in January. The first month of the Hebrew year is actually in the spring. Tishrei is the 7th month on our calendar. Not the first month, but the first day of Tishrei still became this time during the year which the year changes. Tonight, it's changing from 5782 to 5783, the way we reckon time. There are many historical reasons for this bifurcation of New Year's, but for our purposes tonight, we recall that 7 is a holy number, suggesting wholeness and completion, a meaningful time for the new beginning that is promised at the start of a new year. In the Torah, instead of the new year, Rosh Hashanah is defined by the blasting of trumpets and calling everyone to come together for a sacred assembly. And what do you know? Here we are, doing just that. Page 7, where it says, B'chodesh hashvi'i be'echad hachodesh Yihiyeh lachem Shabbat Shabbaton, Zikaron Truah Mikra Kodesh, Kol Melachet Avodah Lo Ta'asu. In the 7th month, on the first day of the month, there shall be a sacred assembly, a cessation from work, a day of commemoration proclaimed by the sound of the shofar. Page 8.
Beginning of a new season. closing of another. This is the beginning of a new year and the closing of another. Declare Shana v'kilaloteha, Tachel Shana u'brikoteha.
May it be your will, eternal our God, God of all generations, that the year 5783 bring to us and the whole house of Israel and the whole world life and peace, joy, exaltation, redemption, and comfort. And let us say, Amen. Please remain standing. It's just want to say Rabbi Daniel, Rabbi Karen, and I had a moment before the service just to remind ourselves what a privilege this is to be with all of you. And I want to say it's also a privilege to share this with these wonderful rabbis.
Shana Tova. Every time we have a Kaddish in our service, a Chatzi Kaddish, a mourner's Kaddish, it's a liturgical pause. It's the punctuation, it's the grammar of our prayer book. It lets us know that we are leaving one moment, one intentionality, and entering into another. Every transition is an embrace of the newly possible and a letting go of what has been. And so this Kaddish marks that liminal space between the year that we have had, the year of challenges and of joys, the year of triumphs and tragedies and routine moments that have slipped through our fingers. This Kaddish marks that space between 5782 and 5783. And so let us take one last moment to think back on the year that has been, the people we have been, the moments we have been there for those we love, and the moments we have fallen short of being the human beings we are trying to become. Before we enter the new, let us acknowledge and accept and mourn that which was and that which wasn't, and the dreams that we said goodbye to this year. Let us let go of the ways we have failed ourselves, and let us begin to revel in the possibilities of tomorrow. We're standing for the Chatzi Kaddish, and for a moment, in just a moment, we will have the first Baruch Hu of the year. But before that, let us have one moment more with the in-betweenness of it all. Let us hold on to this year that has been, the moments of sweetness, as we say the words of Chatzi Kaddish on page 9. Yitgadal v'yitgadash Shemei Rabbah Be'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayedecho be'Yisrael bagala u'vizman kariv v'yimeru amen. Yeheshmei Rabbah mevorach le'alam olam me'almaya Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yipar v'yiromam v'yinaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudesha brichu leila min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damiran be'alma v'imeru amen. may be seated as we invite Terry Krause up to share words of reflection.
It is just over 50 years since I made the public and ceremonial declaration to become Jewish. I was determined. That was good, because my road to becoming Jewish at the moment was sometimes bumpy. For example, after being told conversion to Judaism is required to be discouraged 3 times before continuing the process. I thought I had met that requirement, but more seemingly discouraging moments awaited me. Imagine, how would you feel knowing this requirement and then arriving at the Chicago Loop address for the basic Judaism class, only to find you've been arrived at the Christian Science building, where someone called it How to Be a Jew in 10 Easy Lessons? Or how about asking your Jewish friends to explain what they knew about mikveh? They would then say they were voting for him in the next election. And a sidebar, for those of you who don't know Chicago politics in the 70s, Abner Mikveh was an attorney general. At one point, he was an Illinois attorney, chief judge, United States Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia, congressman, White House counsel under Bill Clinton, and was a Presidential Medal of Freedom recipient. And on a more local note, he had also attended WashU. He served as a navigator in the Army Air Corps. It is important to note that he had nothing to do with ritual purification. I remember being told no one should question my Jewishness or Jewish origins. I believe it was said in the spirit of inclusion, but that's not how it made me feel. There were people, Jews and non-Jews, who treated me as if I were almost Jewish. That is not authentic. That is to say, not authentic. This didn't happen all the time, but often enough. When this happened, I often found the Shema was comforting and supportive. It is called the watchword of the Jewish people with good reason. And coincidentally, it's the first prayer I think we all learn. Under Roman rule, each province not only had its own ruler, but also its own god. You were allowed to worship more than one god, but were required to worship the provincial god as your primary god. Confused? I was. But let's say your region worshiped Michael Jordan, but your family came from people who worshiped Jim McMahon. You could still worship Jim McMahon, but Michael Jordan had to be your primary god. I know that's a silly example and an oversimplification to explain that in Judea, one was required to worship the Hebrew God as their primary deity. In provinces where other gods were primary, but Jews resided, Jews were usually required to worship their provincial god. This often led to conflict, banning of worship of the Hebrew God, and even punishment by death. In the Torah, it says humans are made in the image of God. I embrace this with my entire spiritual being. The Shema is a statement of faith in the oneness of Adonai. Being made in the image of Adonai, is there not a oneness to our existence as Jews? Some believe there is no real need to officially convert to Judaism to be a Jew. I myself would not advocate that. I think you would miss so much on your journey, but I'm not sure I could argue against it. Although the Shema proclaims the oneness of God, I feel it proclaims our oneness with each other as well. I no longer feel defensive if someone asks how I came to be Jewish. I also find most Jewish people I meet don't feel the need to validate my Jewish origins. In proclaiming the oneness of God, we open ourselves to proclaiming our oneness as people. At Yom Kippur, we seek atonement for ourselves as individuals, but for all of us as one. So that. Thank you.
And so, with those words ringing in our ears, we let the dualities fade away. We let the differences between us slip away as we close our eyes. As we say these ancient words of Shema on page 13, invite everyone, if it's your custom, to remain seated or to be standing, or we won't judge you if you lie down, or whatever your custom is for the Shema, page 13.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad.
If you're standing, you may be seated. We chant together on page 14. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol meodecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibata bam b'shivtecha b'veitecha uvlechtecha v'derech u'shochbecha uv'kumecha u'ksatam leot al yadecha v'hayu litotafo b'neinecha u'chtavtam al mezuzot beitecha u'visharecha leman tizkeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'item kidoshim le'elohechem ahani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem le'elohim ani Adonai Elohechem Adonai Elohechem, Amen. I really believe that Mi Chamocha is the great theory, the great thesis of Judaism. That we can take our memory, and sometimes it's not even our memory, it's a memory of a memory passed through generations. That we can take the memory of the awfulness that happened to us in the past, the awfulness of enslavement and of genocide, of displacement, of ethnic cleansing, and that we can leverage these memories for this moment today to create empathy with those who are vulnerable in this moment. More than any other commandment, 36 times, the Torah has some variation on "you shall not oppress, for you were oppressed." I think it repeats over and over again because it's the opposite of how we behave most of the time. The usual order of things is that we take the awfulness that happens to us and we pass it right on, right? And sometimes it's small ways. You have a terrible day at work and you come home and the spouse is going to hear it. And then the kids are probably going to hear it, and then the dog and the cat and the, right? But we see this also in generational abuse and trauma. We see it within individuals, and we see it within nations. For most of the commandments in the Torah, the reason given for why we're supposed to obey it is clear. Do this because God said so. but not this one. You shall not oppress, the Torah teaches, because we know what it was like to taste oppression. And this doesn't give us special privileges. The awfulness of our past, Torah teaches, does not give us special privileges. It gives us unique obligations. Page 16, Nichamocha.
Baruch atah Adonai, Gar Yisrael.
Amen. Page 17. So I'm going to tell a little story here. Maybe a little risky story, but I'm going to tell it anyway. I always got Yom Kippur to make up for it if I need it. It's not that bad. So just a few weeks ago, basically, Amy and Gabe were flying to Washington, D.C., where my son is starting his junior year of college. And sitting near them, they struck up a conversation with another parent with a child who was starting their freshman year at a college in Washington, D.C. And they talked and kind of got to know each other, and somehow it came out that Gabe's dad was, in fact, me, was a rabbi. And right away, that's a big deal, because I think some of you know there was a few years there where if someone would say to Gabe, "Is your dad Rabbi Randy?" he would say, "No, my dad's a plumber named Pete." True story. Amy will tell you I know nothing about plumbing. Anyway, this young woman who was starting her freshman year, she said, "Wait a minute. When I was in 7th grade, all these bar and bat mitzvahs. Your dad, Rabbi Randy, he's iconic." And that felt good to hear. Felt really good that Gabe heard it, but then I kind of started to spiral down that rabbit hole of maybe it's not good to be iconic, because it means you don't change. You just sort of stay the same. So I had one more thing to deal with for my preparation for the high holidays. One more wrestling to wrestle and struggle to struggle. But I'm still going to sing Hashkivenu. That's my story. Take this soul, living in my skin and bones. Take this soul and let it sing. Yahweh, Yahweh, always pain before a child is born. Yahweh, Yahweh, it's always dark before the dawn. Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu v'shalom, v'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim. Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu v'shalom, v'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim. Allow us to lie and rise in peace. Shalom. Allow us to lie and rise in peace. Shalom. Sing it out. Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu v'shalom, v'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim. Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu v'shalom, v'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim. So take a deep breath. Breathing everything that is within you and around you into your heart and soul. Breathe strength and courage, faith and hope, love and wholeness. Because this part of this song that's become a prayer, this prayer that we turn into a song, asks us with a full heart, at least for now, to believe that everything's going to be all right. I remind you, it doesn't say everything's going to be perfect. We know that's impossible as much as we want it to be so. But it's got to be all right. So here we are. Everything's gonna be alright. 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 Ufros aleinu sukkot, sukkot shlomecha. Ufros aleinu sukkot shlomecha, and cover over us tonight with a sukkot shalom, a shelter of peace for you, for those you love. Shelter of peace for all those who are wrestling, struggling, facing difficult truths. For those who are vulnerable and sad and mourning, missing somebody special tonight. For for those who are oppressed, victims, for each and every one of us in our moments where we're bowed low. We hope for a shelter of peace this night and this new year to cover all creation, everyone and everything that dwells on earth. May everyone know peace, shalom, love, shalom.
So we are on page 18. Prayers in Judaism are not just cerebral and verbal. They invite us to engage with the world and with our bodies. The Amidah, this section of our service for prayer, invites us to engage with both. In this next section, we are invited to stand, to rock, to bow, to physically rise with our community as we are able. And we are forced to take a look at ourselves, where we've come from, who we've been, and what kind of world we want to create. But the combination of both reminds us that as we engage in this difficult work of introspection, we are not alone. We can face whatever comes together. We rise on page 18.
Tifetay titach, ufi yagid tehilatecha Adonai. Tifetay titach, ufi yagid tehilatecha.
arrive at the Avot Ve'imahot as we make our way down the page, which conjures up images of those who came before us, all the way back to our ancestors in the Torah: Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, Leah, Bilhah, and Zilpah. And before each name, we say God of, which is the word Elohe, or Velohe, which you'll hear in a moment. So of course, our commentators pick up on why this is repeated, and they ask, why do we have this repetition? And then they answer, because each of us has a different relationship with the divine. Each of us brings something unique to this generation that will carry into the next, just as our ancestors did. And for Rosh Hashanah, we add the special edition of Zochreinu, asking that we be remembered another year to continue our journey and live out our values. So this is written about the Amidah. In silence, on our feet, we speak to you. We rise to speak, a web of bodies like notes of music. Bless what brought us through the sea and the fire. We are caught in history like the whales in polar ice. Yet you have taught us to push against the walls, to reach out and pull each other along, to strive to find the way through, if there is no way around, to go on. To utter ourselves with every breath, against the constriction of fear, to know ourselves as the body born from Abraham and Sarah, born out of rock and desert. We reach back through 200 arches of hips, long dust, carrying their memories inside us to live again in our life. Isaac and Rebecca, Rachel, Jacob, Leah. We say words shaped by ancient youths like steps worn in rock. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avoteinu ve'Imoteinu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Leah, ve'Elohei Rachel, El Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomer Chasadim Tovim, V'Konei Hakol, V'Zocher Chastei Avot V'Imahot, U'Mevi Geula Livnei V'neihem, L'ma'an Shemo Ve'ahava, Melech Ozer U'Moshiach U'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Abraham Ve'Ezra Sarah. page 20. Ata gibor leolam Adonai, mechaye hakol ata rav lehoshia, mechakel chayim bechesed, mechaye hakol berachamim rabim, zohomer noflim ve'rofeh cholim, umatir asurim, umekayehem amunato lishenei michamocha ma'agaviret umido melech melech mebihid umechayeh umatzniach Yeshua v'ne'aman atah lahachayot hakol baruch atah Adonai mechayeh hakol. You may be seated. We continue on the following page with a second Zochreinu, with a second Remember Us, because we know how powerful memory is, especially on this day, when we are told the book of life opens, and may we all be inscribed for blessings in this new year.
Zochreinu Adonai Eloheinu bo l'tova.
For well-being.
Amen. Ufofdeinu livracha.
This day, bless us with your nearness.
Amen. Ve'hoshienu v'lechayim.
This day, help us to live. Thank you, Leslie. Next year, I'm drawing big red arrows on this. So with our next prayer on page 22, Avodah Ritzeh, we say that we hope the lives we are living have been authentic, meaningful, and true. But if we have fallen short, and God knows I have, and we probably all have, may we use these next few moments to pause, take a deep breath, and know it's not too late. So we end the Amidah, we end Tefillah with a prayer for peace. I was going to say page 25, but it's not going to be the one on page 25. What page, Daniel, did you refer me to? 62, if you want to follow along. But before we begin our prayer for peace and end this Amidah, I want to share a poem with you called Wrap Me in Fog. Wrap me in fog, in fleece and cashmere. Wrap me in the wind. The scent of jasmine and honeysuckle and spiced tea and warm foamy milk. Hold my essence, that which is me, makes me different, makes me my own. I sit in a redwood grove, soft in the mulch, the forest floor. This centered self, this whole of me, stay with me today. Stay with me through evening as I sleep. Stay through the brilliance of dawn, my essence in the shelter of your peace.
These are additions to the prayer for peace that we only get during the high holy days. That we sing them in our house every night. This is the lullaby I've sung my twins their whole life. בספר חיים, בספר חיים, ברכה ושלום ופרנסה טובה. בספר חיים, ספר חיים, ברכה ושלום ופרנסה טובה. נזכר ונכתב לפניך, לפניך. נזכר ונכתב לפניך, לפניך. בספר חיים, בספר חיים, ברכה ושלום ופרנסה טובה. אנחנו וכל עמך בית ישראל, לחיים לחיים טובים ולשלום. בספר חיים, בספר חיים, ברכה ושלום ופרנסה טובה.
We pause for a moment of silence for the words of our hearts. You can look back over anything you'd like, or you may just have a moment to take a deep breath and welcome in this new year.
There is something so visceral about Avinu Malkeinu. There's something about these words, about these melodies. Even as a little kid listening to Leslie sing, it was like the air would start to shimmer a little bit. The world would pause for a moment, and we'd all become somehow heavier and lighter all at once. But Avinu Malkeinu changed for me in 2006. Now, I have lived through so many wars in Israel and so many bombings that they often seem to blend together, but not this one. I was in Jerusalem in my first year of rabbinical school, and rockets from Hezbollah had begun to fall from the north. And so I found myself not knowing what to do or what to say, wandering through those narrow corridors of the old city. And I took a turn. I didn't really know where I was going, which is not very safe in the old city, and there I was looking out at the Kotel, at the Western Wall, where hundreds, thousands probably, were gathered in, I don't think you can call it singing. It's like they were screaming Avinu Malkeinu. You could hear the rockets and the artillery and the anti-rocket missiles exploding in the distance, and you could hear the desperation and the hope and the fear in every sacred shout of these ancient words. Avinu Malkeinu is a prayer for the hopeless and for the weary. It's a prayer for when it all feels too heavy. And it's a prayer for when nothing seems to make sense anymore. And so we rise, we open our hearts and our voices and our souls, and we beg this world to live up to its promises. Page 27.
Avinu Malkeinu, Shema Kolenu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chatanu lefanecha. Avinu Malkeinu, Chamol aleinu, ve'alol aleinu, v'tapenu.
Avinu Malkeinu, Erev me'aleinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Talech Osar, Umastiv me'aleinu.
Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Shmena, Be'sefer Chaim Tovim. Avinu Malkeinu, Chadesh Aleinu, Chadesh Aleinu, Shana Tova.
Avinu Malkeinu, Malkeinu, Kadesh Aleinu,
Please be seated. Rabbi Daniel, heavier and lighter at the same time. I'm going to tell another story, but trigger warning. It involves tangentially the Chicago Cubs. And I figured that with the week the Cardinals and Albert Pujols has had, I'm safe up here, right? I think I mentioned the Cubs one time at the Chase and I got booed on the high holidays. But here I am again, the icon. When I was in elementary school in suburban Chicago, the fifth graders were given the chance to become crossing guards. You know, the kids who wore the orange belts and helped their fellow students cross the street near our school. As an incentive, those students who volunteered were promised a field trip to a Cubs game at the end of the school year. I was a crossing guard all year, and the day of the trip to Wrigley Field had finally arrived. My fifth grade self jumped out of bed, raring to go. Then I looked out my window and saw nothing but rain. I got to school and we were informed by Mr. Klipowitz, our gym teacher, and king of the crossing guards, that our long anticipated day at Wrigley Field had to be canceled. Also, given that it was so close to the end of the school year, there would be no chance to reschedule. Our only reward for the crossing guards would be the satisfaction of having kept everybody safe. We all understood. Even at such tender ages, we realized we couldn't control the weather, that nobody could control the weather. But then, miraculously, the sky cleared, the sun came out, it was still morning, the game wasn't starting till 1:20, which was always the starting time of the days before they put those lights in, but I digress. Surely the Cubs could take the field. The trip was obviously back on. We raced excitedly over to Mr. Clip, as we called him. Alas, the answer was still no. The bus had been canceled. The game might go on, but the crossing guards weren't going to see it. We were upset. We were agitated. It was 1975, and we were raised on news broadcasts filled with protest marches, sit-ins, and walkouts. The crossing guards huddled and an idea came to us. Some would say a conspiracy. When the buzzer went off signaling the end of recess, we crossing guards did not budge. Instead of heading back to class, we massed outside and chanted, "We protest, we protest." That was our only chant. We did it over and over and over. There was a small warming house on our school property for an outdoor skating rink, and a few of us climbed onto the roof and continued our protest from up there, which was pretty cool. This lasted for a good while, but eventually the school responded. First, they sent out the nice teachers to reason with us. You know, the ones who knew and loved us from kindergarten. We kept protesting. Then, good cop, bad cop style, the really strict teachers came out to threaten us. Nothing worked. We stayed outside the school until our voices were hoarse, and then we all went to Richard Geist's house, right across the street from the school, to hang out for the rest of the school day and marvel that we had actually participated in a real-life walkout. The next day, all of us crossing guards were called into the office of Mr. Swall, the principal of Brayside Elementary School. And yes, everyone here that's a young person, you will remember the name of your principal from elementary school. Mr. Swall was clearly not pleased. He told us that there had been important guests at the school that day, yesterday, and we had embarrassed him and ourselves with our immature attempt at a demonstration. Mr. Swall told us seriously that we had been bad dragons. Not only that, but he had us wear signs with those words written on them in big letters that we were to wear around our necks all day. I know. Not only that, but we were all to spend the rest of the day in kindergarten classes with our bad dragon signs just sitting there to be bad examples for all the little kids. God forbid they should turn out to be like us. Terrific pedagogy, no? One PS of this story is that I truly remember having a great time with the kindergartners the day of the punishment. I read to them, I helped them, and they thought I was pretty cool for a bad dragon. I actually think that was the first time I recognized that I had somewhat of a gift relating to children. And that experience, honestly, was probably part of the set of circumstances that led me on my life's path. The reason this old story came to my mind recently is because this spring I worked with a teen getting ready for her bat mitzvah, and her Torah portion was Korach. The Cliff Notes version of the story is that Korach and his band of rebels approached Moses in the desert to tell him that he wielded too much power, that all the people were equally holy to Moses. Moses, and more importantly God in the story, disagree. The short-lived revolt is squashed, and Korach and his supporters are killed. This ancient tale led the student and I into a deep conversation about revolutions and protest movements. She said to me that there are always two sides to these disputes. And she argued that the Torah was obviously sympathetic to Moses, to the Moses and God characters, so they became the heroes, and Korach's group became the villains. However, the student argued, if we were allowed to understand the episode from Korach's perspective, we might feel differently. From there, the student surprised me. She said exactly this. For example, nobody in America ever considers the British side when talking about the American Revolution. Turns out her father is from England. And he had discussed with her a point of view that differed from our mainstream version of that famous conflict. Consequently, in her Devar Torah, she wrote, and I quote right from her words, "The Brits felt that they were protecting the colonies by participating in the French-Indian War. Seen from this perspective, the taxes imposed on the Americans, which led to the popular revolt, were intended to be supportive, not punitive. Our American narrative is that we were boldly fighting against tyranny, but she asked us to consider the alternative notion, that the colonists were simply acting like impatient ingrates." It is interesting to note that biblical historians also see the Korach story as one-sided, a useful allegorical device that the lineage of Aaron essentially created to ward off other families that were competing for the priesthood in the ancient Jewish kingdoms. It's an age-old quandary. One person's freedom fighter is another's terrorist, and vice versa. Is your struggle revolutionary or counter-revolutionary? At this point, I do have the voice of one of my rabbinical school history professors in my head saying, there are never really just two sides in any large-scale controversy. Instead, there are a multiplicity of factions that are continually jostling to make temporary alliances with enough of the others to accomplish their agenda. But to state it a little too simply, how do you know if you're on the side of the angels or if you are a bad dragon? One possible answer from our tradition is from the commentary on the story of Korach itself. The rabbis observed that the first words of the portion, Vayikach Korach, contains no direct object. It just basically says in translation, and Korach took, without ever saying exactly what Korach was taking. I'm looking at Ray Slavin. Was this your portion? Oh, Pinchas was your portion. Yeah. Well, good, because I wouldn't want to compete with Ray. From this, they surmise Korach was actually a pretender, a rebel without any cause at all, except for the desire to take what he could for himself. In this interpretation, Korach was merely a taker who didn't really care about a larger mission. He only talked the language of advocating for others when he was truly always and only concerned about Korach. And so eventually the Talmud specifically cited Korach's rebellion as an example of the exact opposite of a righteous controversy. If the cause you are fighting for is ultimately and unquestionably self-serving, and especially if there is a material award waiting for you, like hoping to get to a Cubs game, it's a definite red flag that you're in bad dragon territory. I do not believe this means our tradition frowns upon people standing up for themselves or advocating for one's own family, nation, or tradition. After all, if I am not for myself, who am I is also embedded into Jewish tradition and wisdom. Yet in those situations, when advocating for yourself, there is always a danger of having a Korach-styled taker agenda. And so serious self-reflection is needed to ensure that you are in it for the right reasons when it comes to self-advocacy. On the other hand, participating in the struggles of groups and identities you do not belong to, lifting up the causes of those who you are connected to only as an ally, this decreases the possibility that there are ulterior benefits for you and vastly increases the odds that your involvement is, as the Talmud says, for the sake of heaven. This is most especially true when those people whose side you are taking are vulnerable, taking our cue from our Jewish story, which portrays us as strangers, oppressed, marginalized victims of injustice in the land of Egypt. We are always to remember those origins, that origin story, in order that no matter how established or privileged some of us become, our role is to love the stranger, aid the oppressed, embrace the marginalized, and pursue justice. If I am only for myself, what am I? What does this mean in practical language? If you are financially secure and yet you organize for economic justice, if you are an established citizen and yet you act to protect vulnerable newcomers to our country, including refugees and undocumented people, if you are white and yet protest for racial justice, if you are Christian and yet you fight to preserve religious pluralism and speak out against exclusivist Christian nationalism, if you are a gay or lesbian adult and yet you don't leave behind our trans and gender nonconforming queer kids, if you aren't Jewish and yet you battle anti-Semitism, if you are a man or a person with a body that cannot get pregnant and yet you fight for reproductive freedom, if you aren't Muslim and yet you reject Islamophobia, if you are young and yet you pay attention to the elderly, or you are older yet you mentor youth, if from your side of the political divide you admonish your own allies who dehumanize people merely because they are on the other side, and you try to at least understand worldviews, experiences, and opinions that are vastly different from their own. One of my favorite passages in the Haggadah I compiled many years ago, before I was in rabbinical school, is by the Jewish feminist author Letty Cotton Pogrebin, who said, "There are Egypts right in the middle of our Canaan. Whatever our personal goals and wherever our promised land takes us, we can commit ourselves to choose just one piece from the jagged puzzle of human misery and try to make it better. We can join advocacy groups and work together to combat hate and promote pluralism. We can organize, fundraise, lobby, volunteer our time, speak out, fight for fairer allocations of public resources, give our own money, work in a soup kitchen, demonstrate, yes, even march together again." Here's the part of that passage that's most intriguing to me. She continues, "The mandate is deceptively simple. Imitatio Deo. Imitate what God did for us and do it for others. How do we imitate God? By relieving suffering, by helping to free the oppressed, by undertaking the ritual of empathy and the search for justice as commitments of our own. Thus does the theology of hope inspire the politics of social change. In other words, in our stories, God, though purely spirit, still strives to intercede on behalf of mortals, teaching us that we're not supposed to just stay in our particular lane. We are to sing not only the song of ourselves, but the songs of others too. We're to sing Micha Mocha and Siyahamba. This is by no means easy. These days, we find ourselves living in increasingly isolating times. COVID, our beckoning phone screens, seemingly existential threats around every corner. To many of us, it more and more feels like all we have energy, strength, courage, time, and capacity for anymore is to take care of ourselves and our loved ones. I understand. I completely relate. There is a reason the term quiet quitting is trending wildly. Yet we must not quit each other. In our higher moments, we know that we are interconnected, that despite all of our differences, our fates as human beings are intertwined, and we have a sacred responsibility to serve one another, regardless if the other is a loved one or a stranger to us. We had better reach out across all of our boundaries and lift one another up. And on some level, I have to say this is a rehearsal for the extreme banding together we need sooner rather than later to defend and save the planet, our shared home. Ultimately, there is no them. There is only us. One story that keeps coming back to me as I push myself to stay involved and heed my own words happened back in 2007. I happened to hear about a gathering at the old courthouse to protest a distressing situation in Jena, Louisiana, where a school district was dismissive of nooses that had been hung from what had been dubbed the white tree to intimidate black students who had dared to sit under it for lunch. All I did was join the crowd on the steps of the old courthouse, listen to the speeches, greet the people who I knew who were there, and then I went back to CRC to continue my workday. Maybe an hour of my time. Rabbi Susan always says the simple act of showing up for people as a steadfast ally can be a powerful act of witness, building community and healing. And a few days later, I discovered the truth of this once again. I walked my kids to Flint Park School, and after I dropped them off, a fellow parent, an African-American mom, approached me, and she was visibly crying. She reached to give me a hug and simultaneously handed me a folded-up newspaper, a copy of the St. Louis American. On the front page, there was a large picture of the Jena protest downtown, and there I was, the only white person in the whole photo. With a marker, she had drawn a circle around my face. "It means so much to me that you were there," she said pointedly, and hugged me again. I know she didn't mean it meant so much to her because our kids go to the same school or because I'm a rabbi. It was because people of color felt under attack again, and I'm white, yet I cared enough to show up at what turned out to be a mostly black space. There I was, once again at an elementary school, participating in a protest, but this time I did the right thing. This time, thankfully, I was not a bad dragon. As long as we show up for each other, I remain filled with hope for all of us as we start this new year 5783. Let us all choose, as often as humanly possible, to be on the side of the angels, the Shana Tova. Thank you. Reb Nachman of Bratslav taught us that we should make our New Year Rosh Hashanah last as long as possible. The sermon's over, this is something else. I even drew an arrow at the end of the sermon so I could pause enough, but I don't think I did. So, Reb Nachman of Wroclaw taught that we should make our New Year Rosh Hashanah last as long as possible, because as soon as the holiday ends, the rest of the year will seem to pass by in the twinkling of an eye. So breathe in these moments that we have shared of renewal, of hope, of transformation, of stillness. Let it settle in. The first motion of the new year, in fact, is stillness, a seed preparing to grow. Looking at my friend Karen Flotty. In autumn, the harvest is gathered, which simultaneously creates the seeds we will soon plant. We do this in the most real and concrete of ways, by seeding the ground. We do this in inner ways as well, by engaging in the spiritual journey our sages called teshuvah, positive transformation, renewal, return to our core goodness. The Jewish year begins at the moment of return, when the fruit of the harvest becomes the seed for the next harvest. Our deepest spiritual truth we learn from the earth. New seed must be planted for any growth to occur. Just as a tiny seed can grow to be a massive tree, I'm reading this book called The Overstory, and now I dream about trees 24/7. Just a tiny seed can grow to be a massive tree. Just a small amount of light, hope, love, and repentance can increase exponentially. As it is written, all you need to create an opening for teshuvah is the size of the opening of the eye of a needle. Even that teeny amount of desire for change will allow the opening to grow, it says, until large wagons can pass through that opening. So this is our great Aleinu on Rosh Hashanah. Increasing the light, growing the hope, our obligations to ourselves, to our communities, and to each other. Please stand if you are able. We're on page 29. Seated. So I'm going to move into this part of the service that's obviously very tender, especially this time of year, really all times of the year. We're going to recognize those in our midst who are in mourning. We're going to remember and say things. So I'm going to ask at this time is that if this Rosh Hashanah time is the yahrzeit of a person who you love, who is part of your life, that you stand so we can recognize you. It's a tender time to have a yahrzeit. So this is the anniversary of the death of a loved one this time of year. And then I'm going to ask if you're in your year of mourning to join those who stood up for yahrzeit. And you know, Yizkor of Yom Kippur, we will read every name that we have and that is given to us. For tonight, what I'd like you to do, we will hear some names tonight, but what I'd like you to do is to, if you want, if you stood, just whisper to someone next to you, the person who you're remembering. Just say their names and share with each other those names, and know that every single name, every person is a world unto themselves. And now we're going to ask everyone to stand with our mourners, because we all know what it's like to lose someone, and I know there's people on the stream who are typing in names and remembering loved ones, but also because we are remembering some people at this time and this past year as a congregation. I'm going to mention some names. Rosh Hashanah is the yahrzeit of Theodora Lazarus, Alice Block's mother, and the yahrzeit of Gene Bollinger, Andrew's father of blessed memory, who, though he's not Jewish, I sang the Shema with him, I remember. And right, we held hands and sang the Shema together. For Dina Bornstein, who was Mindy Bergwitz's mother, and I have to say, Dina, you know, when I first came here, I used to drive Dina to Friday night services. She lived at, I always forget the name of the place where she lived, but she lived in, like right off there off of Delmar. And I would pick her up and bring her almost every Friday. And she told Amy that she was my Friday wife. That's what Dina used to say. Right? She was amazing. She was, from Belleville, Illinois. Rebecca Seltzer, the mother of Carl and Jack Shapiro. Papa Jack, Debbie Polinsky's father, passed away too young, and boy, he is remembered. You know the Polinskys. Papa Jack is really remembered. Mickey Zimmering, who was a member of CRC. It's also the yahrzeit of Harold Glazer, Judith Glazer's husband and Amy Gage's father. And we just had the wedding of Lily Gage, Harold's granddaughter, and his presence was felt there. I remember that Harold had a tradition to start the new year. He would clean out everyone's belly buttons. So they could, that's true. So they could start out like with a fresh new year. It's Rose Scharf's, people he knew. Rose Scharf, Kathleen Sitzer's aunt, and Libby Lond Wool, who is Shirley Londy's aunt. And then from this past year, our members, Bruce Schneider and Bob Croft's mother, Verabon Croft, Daniel Williams, young husband and father, his daughter Flannery's bat mitzvah is coming up this year. Paul Schumer, Suzanne's husband, Paul Schumer, who Paul's books in the Loop. Paul was a Torah study, not only a regular, but like someone who just has such a voice in Torah study. Bear Robinson, a backbencher. Wish he was sitting right back there with you guys. Sidney Wolf, Alan and Merle's son. We're so sorry, Alan, for your loss. Burton Garland, Lori and Greg and Allison Garland, Lori and Greg's father, and Allison and Michael's father-in-law. Bill Weiner, who is Mark Weiner's cousin. Larry Mange, a regular at Saturday services. And David Kaskowitz, an amazing person who Robert Fishman over here forged an incredible friendship with. Sylvia Ginsparg, Alice Handelman, Karen's mother. Betty Renee Marver, a wonderful member of CRC. Josh Porter, the son of Fran Porter and Phil. George Newman, Susan's husband. Robert Woofsey, Carol's father. I saw Dan here earlier, Dan's father-in-law. And then Howie Ilovicki lost both his parents in the space of 1 week. Francis and Martin Ilovicki, may their memories be a blessing. Florine Faye Zimmerman, Renee Deal. Hermione Mimi Jacobs Davidson, who was Rabbi Karen's grandma. Aubrey Yawitz, Nancy and Yawitz and Carol Don's father, who I know reached at least 100, maybe even more. 104. Shirley Patisha, can't you just see her just by saying her name? Selena Green, the too young daughter of Maria DeShields. Susan Carlson, the wife of Jerry Greiman. Michael Huxley, Lisa's brother. Charles Fremder, who was Lisi Bernstein's father, and Ruth Gustorf, who was Jeff Gustorf's mother. Nina Levine, the young daughter of Bobby, and Pat Denlow, Bob's wife of blessed memory. Kyle Courier, just right at the yahrzeit time, and there's Holly and Noah for your husband and father. Kyle not only was an amazing member of CRC, but I think he built part of the office, you know? And Samuel Nussbaum, Rhonda's husband. Rhoda, thank you. Rhoda's husband. And so I'm going to bring the words of one of my spiritual heroes into this moment, Bruce Springsteen, who said, "May your strength give us strength. May your faith give us faith. May your hope give us hope. May your love give us love. And may the memory of good people bless our days." Page 32. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divra kirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chaye echon v'yom echon, v'chaye dechol Beit Yisrael, b'agalau v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mivarach le'olam omei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitchomam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yithaleh v'yithalal shemei dekudesha berichu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tush bechata v'nechemata da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlam rab min shemaya V'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimroma. Hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel ve'imru amen. Please be seated just for a moment. And know that the last two parts of this service are always, to me, the most stirring. But I do want to make just a couple announcements, just so people kind of get the sort of whole picture of Rosh Hashanah, which obviously continues tomorrow morning. Services again here at 10 o'clock. Everyone is welcome, and I think it went smoothly tonight, so it should go smoothly again tomorrow. And we'll have the service including Alan Freed, who I see just came up to my left here with the shofar blowing for Rosh Hashanah. And then the children's service will occur at 2:30, so you can leave and come back with your kids, or stick around, however you want to do it, or let people know in your life who have kids. The children's service at 2:30. Then after the children's service, we'll gather at 3:30. Anyone that wants to walk over to Murphy Lake, which is where we do Tashlich every year. Even last year, didn't we? Yeah, we did. We did Tashlich at Murphy Lake, just not in 2020. But we'll walk over from here at 3:30 once children's service ends and all the kids have their apples and honey and start to make, although some kids come to Tashlich, but as everyone sort of makes their way out, we'll see the group who's gathered to do Tashlich. You can also meet us around 4:15 or so while we at Murphy Lake. There is a way to drive there in Forest Park. It's right off of Lindell. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So that's Tashlich. So that's pretty much tomorrow. There is, it's hard to explain the whole day two thing, but we've always done day two at CRC. As I think many of you have heard, while that's always been a Rabbi Susan, Rabbi Jim's service, and lately the brothers Lazarov, we're sending our healing prayers out to Jim and Susan as they get through this COVID that they're experiencing. Luckily, Rabbi Daniel, Rabbi Karen have jumped up, and they will be leading the second day Rosh Hashanah Tuesday, and Leslie and Andrew too, at 10 a.m. So the only other thing I wanted to announce is that, the food pantry. So these baskets, some of you have been here for Bar and Bat Mitzvah, B'nai Mitzvah, where the food pantry makes these great baskets decorated with empty boxes and cans representing donations people make to the wonderful Jewish food pantry, which is always in need of food. They really are. They need food. And so as you saw when you walked in, there are large bins. All through the high holidays, we'll be collecting food for the Jewish food pantry, who help feed not just people who are food insecure that are Jewish, but really all the population that they can feed. It really is a wonderful part of our city and our region. So as much as you can bring food for the food pantry, please do so. And then, we have 10 days of awe, this journey to Yom Kippur, this desire, these actions we take and pledges we make to begin the new year as our very best selves. And I can see your best selves shining through. It's just wonderful to be with all of you. It's often been that we've thanked people at the very end of the services at Nila. And I just feel like I just want to do some thank yous right now, because this is, I think, has everyone kind of discovered that it's really hard to remember how you did things before we had the lockdown and the shutdown. It's like, it was a year or 2 years, but it's just, to gear things up again is really difficult. And this staff did an incredible job getting us ready. I want to introduce everyone, if she might be already out there helping, but we have a very brand new executive director, Sonia Van. Introduce yourself to Sonia in the Oneg room, and Sonia's daughter, Corinne, is joining us for this service. For Nancy Weigley, with the communal memory and the connections to so many people at CRC. Our education team, Maxine and Essie and Becky and Kimberly at the Nest, and I know Kimberly was here earlier. For Autumn in the streaming booth, and for Angela, who keeps us all connected, and Alana. I put an exclamation point after Alana's name because many of you have been in communication with Alana, and Alana knows how to make things happen and get things done. For Ezra at the front, I tell you, between Slichot and these holidays, these chairs have been moved back and forth more times than you can count, and we have an amazing team. Gary, who is our new facilities manager, and Jose, who many of you knew before we closed and reopened, and Octavio, brand new, really amazing, and his crew. I just want to thank the musicians. I keep messing up this line, but that music is what language strives to be, right? Music. So for Alan and Leslie, and Andrew and Robert, and this amazing wind band of Justice and Andrea and Bob Herman and Daniel. Did I get everybody? Good. And Brandon on the soundboard. Vicky Lander for the beautiful flowers, and for everyone who baked. We're about to go out and eat, and these great rabbis behind me, Rabbi Susan, Rabbi Jim. So just wanted to be thankful and filled with thanks at this poignant and holy moment. Now, Alan, come join me. I do love this part. We're going to ask everyone to please stand if you're able.
On page 34. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol am ורוממנו מכל לשון וקידשנו במצוותיו ותיתן לנו אדוני אלוהינו באהבה את יום הזיכרון הזה, יום תרועה מקרא קודש, זכר ליציאת מצרים. כי באנו בחרת ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים, ודברך אמת וקיים לעד. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש ישראל ביום הזיכרון. לחיים.
Yeah. Before we do Motzi, though, turn to page 35. This is good medicine, people. This is good medicine. So, a benediction.
And now, at the beginning of a new year, we pray for a blessing.
Understanding.
Amen.
The spirit of insight and knowledge.
Amen.
The spirit of knowledge and reverence.
Amen.
May we overcome overcome trouble, pain, and sorrow.
May our days and years increase.
יהי רצון לפניך, אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו, שתחדש עלינו שנה טובה ומתוקה.
Eternal, our God and God of our people, renew us for a good year.
May it be a good year.
May it be a healthy year.
May it be a healthy year.
May it be a year of peace.
May it be a year of peace.
May it be a good year.
May it be a healthy year.
May it be a year of peace. May it be a good year.
May it be a healthy year. May it be a year of peace. May we have the strength
May we have the strength
to make it so.
to make it so.
Shana Tova lechol bnei Yisrael, ulechol bnei Enosh. Shana Tova lechol bnei Yisrael, ulechol
Shana Tova. So, we do have, a few months back, we kind of opened ourselves up for being able to eat in the Oneg room. So if you're comfortable, people taking their masks off and having a nosh, apples and honey and all kinds of good stuff to nourish us, not only mind and spirit, but body too. So for gratitude, for everything we have to share with each other and share with everybody, we make this blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lachem min haaretz. Amen. And now, put our arms around each other. Claire, put your arms around your mother.
She's running away.
Oh, maybe. Everyone fine? Is everybody cool? We're good?
Good.
All right, you look good, truly. So before we leave this sacred space, let us leave each other with words of love and peace, words from the Torah scroll that you'll hear chanted from tomorrow, words that are just part, again, of our DNA in this community, this sacred, beautiful, loving community. So we say, Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. May God bless and keep each and every one of you now and always. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yichuneka.
And may we take some of the light and love we feel being together in the Sukkot Shalom, and may we take it into a new year.
Yisar Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom.
Most of all, may this new year be a year of peace for us, for our families, for our community, and for this whole world. And we say,
Amen.
Amen. And Shana Tova!
Yay! Yasher Koach.
it was really a beautiful teaching. This was such a nice.
So, in the Zokrainu. Yeah, we're. Bring us a copy of the other Zokrainu first tomorrow.
Yeah, let me know if you always tell me if you don't have something.
Yeah.
It's on the list. It's on the list.
Yeah, but it means I have to look at it.
Yeah, I
Right,
guess
so
that's
on
what happens when you go to school. You do learn how to do that.
On the